Hey, I want to welcome Kennesaw Happenings to a podcast. We're here at Overture, our 55 and older community, right next to Academy Sports behind QT and the Whole Foods Hobby Lobby area. In the studio is a very organized thinker and strategist. So we met about a week ago, and so organizing is something I like. So, Kenika, tell our viewers who you are, what you do, and who you serve.
Hello, my name is Kenika. So I am a professional organizer. I help clients declutter their belongings and their space and organize what they decide to keep. So we've been doing it for about 5 years. Our company name is Tidied by Kane, based out of Atlanta, Georgia. But really the premise of our services is helping clients become intentional about what they own and setting up systems so that they can have access to those things that they love.
Oh, it's music to my ears. So tell me, 5 years ago, so were you like an organized by nature? Did you stumble on it? How did you get into the business?
I've always been organized by nature. So as a kid, I was the one that was always like revamping my closet or, organizing my agenda in school. So I've always been that type of, individual just to keep a tidy space.
Mm-hmm.
I stumbled on the industry after watching the show Tidying Up with Marie Kondo on Netflix.
Yep.
So after I saw a couple of episodes of that, saw her, teach clients how to declutter and organize what they decided to keep, I thought to myself that this was something that I could do as well. And so that was really the birth of Tidy by K.
Awesome. So what were you doing before you made that transition?
I was all over the place. I was a teacher. I did Teach for America in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So I taught for 2 years, taught first grade. Then I came back home to Atlanta. I moved into healthcare. I was doing finance for a healthcare system. Then I shifted into data. And so I became a data manager, managing all the data for our compliance department.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started Tidied by K while I was doing the data while I had the data role.
That's cool to hear. There's a saying here when, and people might know it if they're familiar with Overture. It's like welcome home, they say, and it's like welcome home to a community because people will have a home and they get to a point. I don't want to do the maintenance. I'm just not going to be a homeowner anymore. I want to be more focused on community and I want to enjoy that part of the life. So they transition from a home to an apartment. What would you say, if you looked at that task, what do people have to think about and how long in advance would they have to plan to make a transition from like a 4-bedroom house to an apartment?
Yeah, so in terms of what you should think about, it's really downsizing. What do you no longer need? What are some of the things that are not necessities that you can easily part ways with? All of the stuff that's in your 4-bedroom home is not going to be able to fit comfortably in a smaller apartment. So you have to be really intentional about what are the things that are serving you that you absolutely want to have in your apartment. In terms of timeline, I think it depends on several factors, how much stuff you currently have in your home. If you are physically able to do the work of downsizing, getting rid of the things. If not, then, do you need to plan out some type of support? Is family going to, schedule time away to kind of support you in decluttering and getting rid of things? Or do you need to hire outside support? And if so, just kind of forward thinking in terms of timeline. So maybe you want to start this process 6 to 12 months prior to wanting to be out of your home, right? So it's just a matter of kind of understanding the support that you're going to need and doing a little bit of research or having your family and friends help you with that research to figure out what you need to do next.
It's really insightful. And I think planning is everything. And, I see, and I've seen it a number of times here, the movers taking back stuff. It didn't fit. It didn't, you're trying to squeeze in all this stuff because you're emotionally tied to it. So if you could walk our viewers through, because I know Barbara Hemphill, I remember years ago when we met, she talked about the emotional part of organizing.
Mhm.
What do you find yourself as a therapist along with an organizer, and how do you kind of bridge that emotional connection to our stuff as we're now downsizing?
Yeah, it's funny because even as a teacher, you wear so many hats as a teacher, right? So you're a teacher, sometimes you're mom to the kids, sometimes you're the nurse to the kids, sometimes like you're the good guy, the bad guy. So you're wearing a lot of different hats. And I think even as an organizer, you get in a space where not only are you physically supporting the client with decluttering and organizing, but a lot of times you're listening to their past experiences, you're honoring, the feelings that they have with the things that they own in their home. So sometimes it does feel like, you're a home therapist in a sense. In terms of like managing that, I think a lot of times as an organizer, as a professional in this space, I have to do a good job of being objective with what the goals are that the client has already expressed to me. So we can honor the feelings that you have, and our jobs as organizers is not to tell you what you can and cannot keep. Mm-hmm. However, our job is to be very objective, to say, hey, you have this 4-bedroom home. All of the furniture that's in this home is not going to fit in a 1,000 square foot apartment. And a lot of times they're not even that big, right? So just helping them to be objective, but still honoring how they feel about their things.
Oh, that's good. I like, I hear it come up, and I just want to know your opinion on it. China, that our generation, I'm speaking like the baby boomers, that was a big thing. Mm-hmm. Now it's not as important. And all of a sudden you've got 3 sets of China that we're trying to navigate. What other things are like that you come in contact with that are different from one generation to the other, and there's a higher priority? What have you seen in your work that, people struggle emotionally with, and how to handle the transition?
I think so. Photos are a big one. Today everything is on your phone. You have your digital albums. Most of our photos are on our phones. And if you want a physical copy, you can go about, getting them printed. However, from earlier generations, that wasn't a thing, right? So you have, thousands of photos, hundreds of photos. A lot of times they're not organized. They're not in albums. They're not in a scrapbook, even though you may have had like the best intentions of kind of organizing the photos that way. But it has such sentimental value, right? Like people aren't just going to throw away their photos. So what do you do with the photos? Well, that's a great project to have an organizer support you with, right? Because they can get them all organized. If you sit with them, with the client, then you can get the years for everything and just have them set up so that they're now in an album. But those are typically things that people don't want to, part ways with. But mm-hmm. You do need to find a way to keep them structured and organized so that when they do want to go down memory lane, they're not trying to, find them through miscellaneous bins throughout the space.
Yeah, that's good. And there was a friend that was sharing on the podcast, and she was talking about some of the activities that she's enjoying doing because, as I think we all like to use our hands to do things. Yeah. And so we're now in a digital world where you just said it, there's less of that scrapbook type mentality that we had years ago. Mm-hmm. But she has found that on Sunday, that's her scrapbook time where she takes not only pictures, but memories and puts it in a place where she can enjoy it because so much is on the phone, which is on the phone. I mean, right. You can't see it on a regular basis. So do you what's your thoughts on scrapbooking or taking digital and making it into something that can be enjoyed, like a book or a printed copy of something?
I think it's great. I think it's a fun activity or exercise. If that's something that you enjoy doing, taking, things that are digital, putting them in some type of physical capacity, whether it's a scrapbook or a photo album or things like that. I think, it's worth someone's time and effort if they're wanting to have like a physical compilation of, past times that they enjoyed.
Mm-hmm. What when COVID hit, and obviously 5 years you overlapped COVID, did that change your business, the remote aspect of what COVID birthed? Did you now, or do you service people remotely where you were doing it more hands-on?
So yes, so COVID definitely impacted the business, right? Because we had quarantine, you couldn't go into client spaces at the time. But I think there was a mental shift for a lot of people, right? Because now you're in your home 24/7. There's nowhere to go. You're working at home. Life is at home. And so you start to look around and start to see all the piles of stuff or all the clutter, the frustration that builds up because it's like, when did this happen? So we did start offering virtual services during COVID just to kind of support people in that process of learning how to create systems that don't feel as overwhelming, or systems that are more organized to help you be more productive in your day to day, right? Because a lot of us shifted from working in an office to working from home. So virtual organizing services on our end was birthed because of quarantine. But in terms of like our clientele or just people in general, there was definitely like an awakening that happened for people to recognize like, oh, I actually need to get my home in order because this does not feel good.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. What would you say, like in your experience in the 5 years, there's always like things that come up over and over and over again. If you had to tell our viewers, like, what would be your top three that just, I mean, almost like come up like you could walk into somebody's place blindfolded and that same problem comes up. If you could break that down for us, would you be able to kind of narrow it down to three or two things that keep coming up?
I'll give you the two biggest things. It's one, too much stuff. People have way too much stuff in their home. Even if you're not like an avid shopper, which most people, from my experience, always have new things coming in. Too much stuff, but you're not being intentional with the things that you own or the things that you allow in your home. So, meaning you're not decluttering enough, you're bringing in too much stuff in the home on a consistent basis without knowing or thinking through where this new stuff is going to live, right? So you have Amazon packages coming in. There's, people joke about Target where they went in to get shampoo and they somehow spent $300 in Target. And it's like, yes, it's all of these impulsive buys that you buy things, you don't think through where they're going to live when you get them home. And then that satisfaction of that new thing dies shortly after. So now you just keep adding to the clutter. And then the second mistake that I noticed with clients as it pertains to their home is not, again, being intentional or being a good gatekeeper of what you, again, allow in versus out.
I love that. I mean, I've always kind of indirectly, not intentionally, I always have broken everything down to the 80-20. We wear 20%. We wear 80% of the time, 20% of our clothes. And no matter what you do, it always seems to break down to that formula. So we buy all these clothes and we only wear a few of them. Yeah. And there was like industries that have been birthed because of our accumulation of things. My friend is in the self-storage business. And it's like, we can't fit it in our house. So what do? We go get a self-storage unit to put our clutter in. What would you say, like, if somebody, and I know a person, I won't mention them by names, moved and got a self-storage unit, 8 years later, it's still there?
Yep.
Do you see that a lot?
I've done supported clients where a lot of times they're like, we're just going to put in the storage unit, or they hire us to tackle their storage unit because they've spent car notes on it for years.
Yes.
They just take stuff out of their home and put in the storage unit, out of sight, out of mind. My thoughts are to not invest in storage units, just because over time we spend so much money storing stuff that you never access. The name of the game is to be intentional about the things that you own, whether it's in your home or not. right? So if you're just using a storage unit because you don't have the space for the things in your home, I would implore, that person to kind of really sit down and think through, is the stuff that I have in my home intentional? Do I need all of these things? And the same is true for the stuff that you put in your storage unit as well. Is this stuff intentional? Do I really need it? And really what is the objective here with the storage unit? Because before you know it, it'll be 5 years and you spent $10,000 on storing.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy when you think that it sits out there. Now it is out of sight, out of mind, but you haven't really done anything with that. You didn't go to it and pull things out. It's almost like it's a off the premise storage. Well, it is off premise storage, and basements can be that way too. What do you use personally? Like, tell our viewers, like, do you have a formula or a philosophy that allows you to operate in your space, but yet not accumulate too many things?
I don't know if it's a formula. I think it's more so being intentional about your home. I grew up very transient, right? So by the time I got to 6th grade, I had already been in 7 different schools. So I moved a lot as a kid. And so as an adult, I take home very serious. Like, I want my home to feel good. I want my home to feel like my personal sanctuary. And because of that, I'm very intentional about the way I create my home or created my home or, operate within the space. And so for me, it's more about, is this something that I absolutely love, use, need, and I want it in my home? If it doesn't fit in those buckets, then it's not something that is intentional and it's not something that I need to have in my space. And so it's just a matter of, again, being a better gatekeeper of what you allow in and allow to stay, but also getting in a good practice of, editing the things that are in your home, because maybe something that I loved a year ago is something that now I don't use as much, and I could probably declutter or, donate it to someone else.
I like you said donate. So, we emotionally are tied to things. I always use this I don't know if it's just helped me do it, is I was repurposing it to another person. So it's almost like my clutter becomes somebody's need.
Right.
And so that helped me to emotionally disconnect with something that I knew I needed to do it, but it's sometimes hard emotionally letting go of things.
Yeah.
What do you do when you're like intentionally, because it sounds like our space is our sanctuary.
Correct.
We're happier if our space is more productive.
Correct.
So do you feel like, and you see it every day with the clients you have, do you feel, because you've had this philosophy for years and years and years, that you're more, I'm not going to say happy, but you're more content with your space that you live in?
Yeah, I think it's taken me time. I'm in my home now, but prior to being in my home, I rented apartments, and like clockwork, every year, every 12 months, I just knew I was going to move. And it was because I was never truly vested in the space that I had created. And so I just knew 12 months, I need to find another apartment. And that happened. That was very routine of me until I got into my home. Right. And so I told myself, you need to create a space that you absolutely enjoy being in. And so that's why the home that I'm in now, I've just really made sure that it's just intentional. Everything in there is something that I absolutely want. And so I think it's practice, though. I think this is a habit that you create and then you implement over time. In terms of the sentimental things, I think it's a matter of, if you absolutely know it's not something that can come with you or stay in your home, finding people or organizations that align with what you believe, so that you can feel more confident that it's going to go to someone who's going to appreciate this thing that you used to love, or maybe still love, but no longer have a need for it, to make sure that those things are going to go to people who are going to appreciate it.
Yeah. And then I know when you talked about the show, I do those same things. I watch these shows and I hear what people say, and so you kind of keep picking up little pointers here and there about how, as a society, we accumulate through a generation, and then we start, downsizing, whatever it is. What would you say when you said systems? And I know you had told me building a team. How has systems helped you, and what are you doing to build that team with systems? Because you obviously, in data, you talked about your background and experiences. What would our listeners that don't have maybe a system, what would you say to encourage them about that part of the business?
As it pertains to like home, like how you create systems?
Well, for business, maybe, because I see it in business that if a person is going to grow, they have to have systems to grow. What would you say you have found to be successful for yourself in that area for the business growth?
For the business growth, when you have systems, it allows you to delegate. It allows you to automate different things so that you're not doing a lot of the manual stuff that takes your time. It allows for efficiency. And it also allows for like a level of consistency, right? So, Susie's going to get the same experience as Bob, and Bob's going to get the same experience as, Amber, right? Because you have the systems, the automation. I don't have to worry about certain things getting missed because it's already automated. So that has been very helpful in terms of delegating. When you have the systems already established, as I'm building my team, because the system exists or the process exists, I can just say, hey, Catherine, this is what I need you to do. There's already an automation. I just need you to follow these steps, right? So that's how system has benefited me in terms of me trying to, further grow the business.
Yeah, I love it when we first talked. I saw you at the meeting, the BNI Smyrna, and my first question is, and I see it as a challenge when a solo owner comes into BNI, they get so busy they can't attend, or they're not able to function with the growth. Right. And so speak to like people that obviously you think of just what you explained. That's why you're flourishing within that environment, I think, because it makes sense. And I was just at a BNI yesterday, and so I gave a testimony. I said, if you're a solo and you're the only one, you're going to get busy real quick. And if you don't know how to build a team, you're going to get frustrated real quick.
Yeah.
Would you say that because you have embraced that concept, you were there that day I went to see you, and I went to one, I won't mention the person's name, but it's an accountant. And the thing was, well, it's accounting season, so Joe's not here. And I'm thinking, you're the face of the business. You can't miss. You have to be there. Just because you get a busy part of the season, you can't just step yourself out of it, because I think we don't rely on the systems. What's your thoughts that our viewers could kind of understand, maybe, because are you signing up for another year with BNI?
Yeah, so I'll renew. I think to your point, it does require that you have support. I read a book. It's called We Should All Be Millionaires by Rachel Rodgers, and she has like a task list for CEO-minded people to do these 7 things. And one of the things is always to delegate a task each day. Every day you should be delegating something. And the goal of the list is to help you, eventually get to that 7-figure mark and that multi-7-figure mark, if that's a desire of yours. So delegation is big. And one of my goals is to delegate a task a day, and it doesn't mean you have to have like a team of people. Maybe you just have a personal assistant. Maybe you're delegating something to a family member, a spouse. Just the idea is to delegate. So when you take that concept and apply it to a business sense, the goal is for you to get to a point where you are building a team so that you have additional support, so that you're not doing all of the things and wearing all of the hats in your business. So last year, for instance, we got extremely busy with organizing, which is great. But organizing is physically daunting work, right? I'm working on our feet. We typically get about 12,000 steps a day, and that's on a low end with the work that we do. And so there would be some mornings where I'm just dog tired. And because I know like this was a hard week, I'm already going through, my contact to see if I can find a sub.
Gotcha.
Just to kind of.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Because you're right. The physical nature to it, 12,000 steps is 12,000. So it's like, and that's definitely real. Now, as we wind down, how can people do business with you? What's the first step for somebody that says, oh man, I need somebody to come alongside me?
Yeah, so we offer in-person support. We are based in Atlanta, but we do travel. So we've gone all over. We've gone to California and New York and Florida. So we are happy to travel to clients to help support them in their, needs of decluttering and organizing their home. But that's really the bread and butter of the work that we do is our in-person support. However, we do have digital guides that kind of can teach you how to follow our process and DIY it at home if you feel like you have the capacity to manage it.
So are they like, do they call you? Do they email you? What would you tell our viewers? Could you just share your information, how they can support what you're talking about in this podcast?
Absolutely. So I am www.tidiedbyk.com. Tidied is TIDIEDBYK.com. That's our business, is Tidied by K. So all of the social media handles are all Tidied by K. So that's on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, if you're looking for just free content to kind of support you in organizing. But yes, our website is www.tidiedbyk.com.
Thank you. And we'll put, for you in Atlanta at least, we were just talking before we came on, and Judith lives here and she's moving to Wyoming, and population is just over 500. So no traffic is out there on something like that, but there's a lot of traffic here. So we want you to stay focused. We'll put it in the show notes that allow you just to go down there and click on and be able to get support and help. So as we finish up, what would you want? What would be the one thing you want our viewers to take home from your time on this podcast? If you could narrow it down to one thing.
Narrow it down to one thing. Be intentional about your home. Create a home environment that feels good, that feels productive, and that you love. The decluttering, the organization, those are all byproducts of really being thoughtful about your home.
Awesome. Kenika, thank you so much for being a guest. We really appreciate you sharing your insights and knowledge and expertise with our viewers.
Thank you.